You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am starting us off this week. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now,
good to be back.
Oh, it's going to be great. So we've joked on this show about a variety of places that we would like to go and visit as like a group. Especially especially some of the places that keep cropping up on the podcast.
Indeed.
So let's imagine that we've done just that. We're on a group vacation. It's very fun. We made it to New Zealand.
Yes.
I really want to go to New Zealand, so that sounds great.
I would love to go to New Zealand. And all three of us are exploring the gorgeous woods of maybe like the Wapua forest on the northwest coast. Okay, so
okay.
Way up there. Beautiful. We're having a great time. We're probably understandably geeking out, having a wonderful time with binoculars and hiking through the woods. When one of us, say maybe Victoria, notices something that is a little new to us. Might be some white eggs on the ground. We don't quite know. I mean, we are in a new country, so lots of new things.
Okay, white eggs.
All right.
What size of eggs are we talking about? Insect, bird, reptile?
Good question. So we go and we investigate, and they're not like super big. They're maybe an inch or two or so.
Okay.
But they're not eggs.
Are they fungi?
Eggs. You just said they were eggs, Rachel.
I know.
So they look like an egg,
like
but this is not an egg.
It's not an egg. Growing out of some leaf litter, we spot a fungus that we've never seen before.
Okay.
Cool.
So go ahead and check out the picture.
Yeah, you've got a picture here for us.
Yeah.
Yikes. Want me to describe what we're seeing here?
Go for it.
I don't think this looks like an egg. It looks like something. The left half looks like it has sort of almost like a snail shell type coating on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the right half looks like mucus or a pile of snot or something with some sort of alien creature growing inside of it. I can't tell if it's like an animal or a plant, or there's like some little red lines that could be like little legs of like some sort of creature. This looks like something someone finds on an alien planet in a movie. And someone says, we probably shouldn't touch that. And then of course someone touches it. And then, the entire movie is them being devoured by, whatever this creature is.
Right.
How did I do?
Yeah, it definitely looks like there's an alien creature about to hatch out of it. For sure. Yeah. Possibly like a land-based giant squid.
Oh, a land-based giant squid who is going to take up residence like in your chest cavity.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't look like super weird though, right? Like it does, but like, okay.
I don't know. It's pretty weird.
It looks pretty weird.
Yeah. So we kind of leave that and we go further up the path and we notice something similar to this, but this time, go ahead and look at
image number 2.
Image number 2 and 3.
We'll check out image number 2 here. Oh, and 3.
Oh no.
Oh gosh. Oh. Okay. This is even more terrifying now.
God.
You
The
know,
creature is
when
emerging.
you said that it was
Oh.
it looks like something's ready to emerge. Well,
Yeah, I was
it
pretty
did.
right. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
how to describe this? Go
It
for it,
actually,
Victoria.
I feel like there is an actual horror movie that this reminds me of, but I'm
Oh,
trying to
sure.
remember what it is.
Is it
It's a little
the
bit
cover
like
of
little,
the video Tremors, or like the
Oh
not the one with
no.
the big mouth coming up from underground, kind of?
little like Little Shop of Horrors,
Yeah,
crossed with a Demogorgon from Stranger
Uh-huh.
Things, actually.
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
So it's
It's
got
like
Fair.
Little Shop
three.
of Horrors, but not cute. More like
Yeah.
some sort of eldritch horror.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is awful, Rachel. This is
Yeah, so there's-
nightmare
You're
fuel.
There's
welcome.
pointy red, mucusy looking spikes emerging from the egg,
Mhm.
3 or 4 of them. And they've got, so it's kind of a mottled red color, and then there are these blackish,
Very fleshy.
yeah, black
Yeah.
mucusy looking strings still attached to the different the tentacles that are poking
And
up.
I think those
That's
those
good-
look like
good word for
sharp
it.
black teeth. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not. Obviously, there's some sort of like gooey stuff, but it looks like black, like blood covered teeth. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, you're welcome. So generally
What are we
speaking,
looking at? This is a fungus. It looks right.
it is a fungus. So generally speaking, there's anywhere from 4 to 8 of those reddish arms that come out of the original shell, protruding up and out vertically about 4 inches or so. Okay, so it's not a huge
Okay.
fungus, but
Mhm.
it's decent. What we're seeing is called Clotharis Hold on. Clotharis archiari. We're going to go with
Okay.
it. Also known as octopus stinkhorn or devil's fingers.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
there
a
you go.
stinkhorn. Of course, it's a stinkhorn.
Octopus stinkhorn. I mean,
They're always the
Yeah.
worst. You know, the final form, this third picture you have presented us
Yes.
with, is kind of pretty. I mean, it's not
It is.
doesn't look as slimy and horrifying, and like something in the second one looks like something literally bursting out of someone's stomach. The last
Yeah.
one's it's not. It's
yeah.
It's just kind of it's kind of pretty.
Although it does look like somebody took a blowtorch to it because it has these blackened areas. It looks
It
sort of
does.
charred at this point.
Those have a purpose, actually, those blackened
do
areas.
tell.
So, as the common name suggests, it is a stinkhorn fungus. The secondary arm stage, as it is actually called, starts connected together, and as it emerges from the egg stage, also what it is actually scientifically called,
The egg stage.
until they reach about 10 centimeters in length. And eventually they separate and open up into those arms with like a dark olive colored gloop called gleba. So the gleba
Called what
actually,
now?
gleba
With a B, bleba.
gleba with a G.
Gleba with a G.
Oh, with a G,
Okay.
gleba. Okay,
Gleba. All
that was
right.
had to get that down. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gleba.
Now the gleba is a bit slimy, and when mature, smells of rotting flesh.
Sure it
Oh,
does.
of course it does.
Yeah.
It's a stinkhorn.
It's a stinkhorn. So the gleba actually has the spores of the fungus in it, so it wants to be picked up and taken away by flies.
Lies. Yeah. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And it spreads really, really well. It's actually, this particular fungus has become naturalized in North America. And
Really?
North America, and is considered invasive in Europe. It can be found anywhere from, it's thought to originate in New Zealand and Australia and Southern Africa, but it's been found just about everywhere now. It really likes the duff layer. It is a saprophyte, so it eats all of the dead stuff.
Gotcha.
Dead plant stuff.
All dead plant stuff. Now, of course, the big question on everyone's mind: can we eat this?
That was not
actually had not occurred to me to want to eat it.
Other way around. Will this eat me? Was the question I was wondering.
Oh,
not
good.
Can I eat it?
Well, first of all, if you are thinking, can we eat it? Gross. Why do you want to have a zombie experience? Why?
Awful.
Second,
this is like the aforementioned movie I talked about.
Exactly. Second, to quote the mycology website, mycoweb.com, who did do this, it is edible in the egg stage, but of inferior quality. One of us has tried it and found the texture and flavor very disagreeable.
Okay, so it's not going to kill you, but you don't want to eat it,
no,
basically.
It's pretty much the general consensus is why would you want to? But for the most part, it's not going to kill you, but it is going to not be pleasant the entire time.
If you were starving, you could eat it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Good.
Good.
God, I'm just trying to think of a joke here with comparing it to a certain restaurant. Like you can eat everything there, but it's technically edible. If you're starving, you could eat it. But I figure any restaurant I would name, we could get sued. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah. Well, that's what I have for you both this week. The octopus stinkhorn. My sources this week were iNaturalist, Wikipedia, National Geographic, and the Myco web. We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, it'll be Victoria.
So, a fun little thing here, you guys. We, before we get on to Victoria's story, we got a letter from one of our listeners. Incidentally, there's a bunch of ways you can get a hold of us. I mean, you can talk with us on Twitter, you can talk with us on Instagram and Facebook, email, contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. You can get us on Mastodon now. We are at strangebynature @mstdn.party on Mastodon. But someone reached out to us through the Podbean app. You can also get us there. And unfortunately, this person did not leave their name because their username is just sort of gibberish. But they said, so interesting that goldfinches smell like maple syrup. They're referencing one of our episodes where I talked about that. They said, in fact, I found your podcast while I was searching the internet to find an answer to my question. I have a pet cockatiel. He is 27 years old, and he usually smells kind of like dry grain or seed. It's a nice smell. However, lately, every time we go on holidays, sometimes for more than a month, his smell changes to maple syrup. His diet is unchanged. He does not appear to be stressed, just in a different location. Why the change in smell?
It's a great
question.
That's
super cool.
That's super
observation.
Fascinating.
Adding into our sort of maple syrup mystery smell for birds. You know, this person did say that the bird is not stressed, but I have to wonder now if I was smelling maple syrup smell on birds that had been bird banded, so they've been captured, they're being handled. That's a stressful situation, and I gotta imagine going on vacation with a human family, being taken on a holiday to a new location. Even if the bird is not displaying some signs of stress, I gotta imagine that's a slightly stressful experience for a bird. So now I'm kind of wondering, is there some sort of connection between stress and this smell in birds? So super fascinating. No answers, but I love that we're putting this out there and we're getting, other people are making observations. We're adding to the data. So maybe someday we'll have this mystery figured out by episode, 200 or something. Maybe we'll know. Someone will start researching this and we'll figure it out.
That would be amazing.
We just need a specialist in bird metabolism to get on this problem.
If you are a specialist in bird metabolism, or if you have any sort of questions for us and want to have a comment on the show, go ahead and contact us through any of those different ways. And we look forward to hearing from you guys. We love to hear what you're thinking about and what you think of the show. So we are going to take things away and go back to
right, we're back. So Kirk, as someone who used to work at an aquarium, and Rachel, as someone who is really into sea creatures,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to introduce you both to a scientist you probably have never heard of, who
Great.
made possible a huge amount of the kind of detailed data that we know about the lifestyles of different marine animals.
Okay.
May I present Jean Villepreux Power, a French marine biologist and the inventor of the aquarium tank.
You assume I've never heard
Oh.
of this person, and you're right. I haven't.
Nope. Completely new information, but that's really cool.
Invented the aquarium tank. I mean, someone had to, I suppose. It's
Someone
never
had
really-
to, and she
Never
did.
really occurred to me that
Didn't
someone
just-
did that.
Appeared. Well, I mean, that goes for just about everything. Somebody had to
Yes.
invent it.
Well, Jeanne took an unlikely path to her science career. She was born in 1794 in central France, and she was the daughter of a shoemaker. And at age 18, she traveled to Paris to take up work as a high-end dressmaker.
Mhm.
And she was very successful. She, for example, made the wedding dress for an Italian princess who married into the French royal family.
That's
That
so
sounds pretty
cool.
successful.
Yeah. She eventually met and married an English merchant, and they moved to Sicily. And in Sicily, she became fascinated with the island's geology, archaeology, and natural history, and especially its marine life, particularly cephalopods. And she also actually published a couple of natural and historical guides to Sicily in Italian.
Very cool.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, as she went on there, she began to focus more and more on cephalopods, but she was frustrated by not being able to view them up close underwater.
Mhm.
So she invented the aquarium and
As you
pioneered its
Why not?
use as a tool of scientific study.
Oh, I love women
Yeah.
scientists.
Pretty great. She was
great.
particularly interested in a cephalopod that is sometimes known as a paper nautilus. It's
Okay.
also known as the Argonaut, full
Mhm.
name. In spite
Right.
of the name, the paper nautilus is not actually a nautilus. It is not closely related to the chambered nautilus. In fact, it is.
Whoa.
An
are
octopus.
Are you saying that a common name is not scientifically accurate?
I know, shocking. Hold the
Who
presses.
would've guessed?
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Never happened
It is, in
before.
fact, it's a really weird octopus, not a nautilus.
The weird octopus? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in. I was already in, but I'm more
Yeah.
in.
More
So,
in.
just a quick explanatory note for those of us who are not super familiar with the chambered nautilus. You've probably seen its shell.
Yeah.
It can be about 16 to 20 centimeters long. That's like 6 to 8 inches. And if you cut it in half lengthwise, it forms this perfect logarithmic spiral with different chambers inside. That's the name.
Mhm.
And it's all lined in mother of pearl. It's very beautiful. The shell is produced. So the nautilus is a cephalopod. It's related to, octopuses and squid and cuttlefish. It has a mantle producing this shell similar to other mollusks, so like an oyster or a clam. So the composition is similar. It's made of a mineral called aragonite. It's just like
Okay.
a typical
Okay.
typical mollusk shell in terms of its composition. The paper nautilus, or we're actually going to call it the Argonaut. The Argonaut produces and swims around in a shell that has a remarkably similar shape to the chambered nautilus.
Okay.
As you might guess from the name, though, the shell is quite thin and fragile, and it has a kind of a crinkled, papery quality to it.
Oh.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So when Jean was studying in Sicily, it had long been thought that Argonauts collected and used other animals' shells, like hermit crabs do.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But using her aquarium, she was able to observe the nautilus making her own shell. Using actually two of her arms have special pads on the tip that secrete a very thin layer of the mineral calcite, which is what
Whoa.
the shell is made of.
That's so cool.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah. So just like imagine if you had the ability to build something by using the sweat on your fingertips.
It's like your
Oh.
fingertips were 3D printers. You could just like run your
Yes.
fingers over a surface and create something. That would be amazing.
I would love that. Oh,
And it is only the female Argonauts that make a shell.
okay.
So when a female Argonaut's ready to mate, she builds the shell as an egg case. She lays the eggs in it.
Wow.
She actually grabs an air bubble from the surface and puts it inside the shell for buoyancy, and then she climbs in after it.
Oh my
And so
God.
she's all
Okay.
kind
Why
of
not?
squished up inside the shell with her her eyes and her ends of her tentacles sticking out. And then she bobs around the ocean because the shell now has buoyancy,
Right.
looking for a mate. And male Argonauts, we actually don't really know what they look like. We've never seen one.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Okay, hold on. If we've never seen one, how do we know they don't have shells?
Well, male Argonauts don't just squirt a little sperm and leave. They actually have a special
Okay.
limb that they use for depositing sperm,
Oh,
and it
gosh.
is detachable.
Pretty.
It's left behind, yeah.
Yes, they take off their own arm, give it to the female, who sticks it inside the egg case. Probably he dies at that point, but nobody really knows.
Because we've never seen one. We've only
Yeah,
seen
and actually-
we need a bigger.
the one
We're gonna need a
arm.
bigger aquarium.
Yeah.
The early scientists who thought that Argonauts were like hermit crabs, they found these appendages inside the egg cases and thought that they were parasitic worms.
Oh, I mean,
oh no.
they're not wrong.
But Jeanne was the first to recognize them for what they are, although she thought it was actually the entire body of the male rather than just an arm.
Mm.
But some interesting research has actually been published recently. So it's long been thought, due to the similarity in shape to the chambered nautilus, that there are that the same genes would be used by the two species to make the shells, and this would indicate something about the genetic relationship of octopuses and nautiluses, because if
Okay.
like that gene has been, if that gene to make the shell goes back to the common ancestor of the two,
Sure.
yeah, it says something about that. But a recent study by a Japanese team actually shows that the Argonaut uses another set of genes entirely. So it still has like the chambered nautilus uses the usual shell making genes as a mollusk, and the chambered nautilus the Argonaut still has those genes, but it doesn't use them to make its egg case. It has another set of genes
Wow.
that it has developed.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it developed this ability after splitting off from the common ancestor with the nautilus, but it is just fascinating that the form is so similar.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
like-
form follows function, but that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And in addition, the paper nautilus shell, the Argonaut shell, actually looks remarkably similar to the fossil shells of ancient ammonites, which were cephalopods
Sure.
that died out about 66 million years ago.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a little, it's still a bit of a mystery. Like, is there some other underlying genetic thing that hasn't been teased out yet about why the shell shape is so similar, or is it just, as you said, Kirk, form follows function? That's a form that seems to work well.
Well, and there's also one thing I just a personal observation that I know I made one time watching a bird build a nest. And you're like, oh, this round nest, and I was struck by how much the shape of the nest was purely a function of the shape of the bird. Like, it's like the circumference is like, well, the bird is in there stomping its feet around, and it puts its beak forward to play something, and the wall ends up being the distance of the beak from the feet, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's a structural thing. So you wonder if there's something about that form. If you have animals that have a similar body structure, if they have this ability and they go to build something, it's just gonna take on that same shape because their bodies are a similar shape, and that's just the most convenient shape to make based on their body shape. It's total speculation, but I mean it's interesting to figure out how these things could come about. Like the idea of the emergent properties of little things all being added together.
Yeah, it's
Which,
an
by the
interesting
way,
thought.
I'm working on a topic for the podcast about that, which is why that's kind of on my mind. So
Okay.
Of course.
maybe next week I'll have something to reference that.
Well, we will be
Interesting.
interested to hear about it whenever you
Yeah.
want to share it with
Teaser.
us.
Huh.
That is what I have about the Argonaut. And after a break, we are going to hear from Kirk.
Thanks, Victoria. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, as a podcaster, I of course listen to a bunch of other podcasts. I was listening to No Such Thing as a Fish this past week, which is a fun British podcast. And they brought up a topic that we haven't covered on the show, and that's lemmings. These are small mouse-like creatures that live in the far north, and there's been a lot of misinformation about them over the years. But there was a fact that they shared on their show that they really didn't dwell on very much. They just sort of mentioned it and moved on. But it has lived rent-free in my brain all week.
Love those facts.
Yeah, and like I said, they didn't really explore the implications of the fact they shared, but I couldn't stop thinking about it and how to put it into perspective for our listeners. So I thought I'd do that here today. The fact they shared was that lemmings go through a boom and bust population cycle, and there's roughly 4 years between the high and the low of this cycle. And if you compare the population numbers, you'll see that there are about 1,000 times fewer lemmings at the bottom of the cycle than at the top.
Wow.
So that number, 1,000 times, really blew my mind. And I decided to do a little digging. So it turns out that 1,000 times is the extreme. It's often more like 100 times difference. But in extreme cases, it really can be a swing that big. I suppose if you go from like a really big population to a really low, it could be 1,000 times difference.
Yeah.
Now, what stuck in my head all week, I think it's partially because of the fact that came out about our population. It was just this past couple of weeks here where humans were estimated to have hit 8 billion people on Earth, which is just absolutely bonkers. And interesting, a lot of people are predicting that this is the peak and that we're now going to see human population starting to shrink in the future. I guess we'll see. It's kind of interesting. But we're also coming out of COVID. And I recently covered the Black Plague on the show, and I'm thinking about like large swings in human population numbers. So this week, I'm not going to do a deep dive on lemmings and how amazing they are and how unique they are and how misunderstood they are. I just want to talk about population numbers and put it all into perspective and possibly break your brains. Okay.
Boy.
So
my brain is already broken. So
this is like a numbers. I'm going to nerd out on numbers. Okay. So during COVID so far, and this is sad, but 6.62 million people have died worldwide from the disease, which is a really big bummer. That's decidedly not great, but it comes out to just 0.08% of the human population. Now, we're not out of the woods yet, and that number will probably grow more, but I think it's fair to say we're close to about 1/10 of 1% of the human global population dying from COVID. So how does that compare to, say, the Black Plague, right? Or the bubonic death, or whatever you want to call it? It's thought that killed perhaps upwards of 200 million people. Now, that is a high side estimate. That's not only a lot more than COVID's 6.8 million, but keep in mind that the global population was smaller back then too. So we're talking about a bigger percentage of the population. Yeah. There was only an estimated 475 million people living on Earth before the plague showed up, compared to 8 billion. We're talking not a lot of humans, right? So 475 million people living on Earth before the plague. So if we go with that high side estimate of 200 million deaths, we're looking at 44% of all humans on Earth dying from the plague, which holy cow. I think that's that number bothers me, as it should. But I mean, I also don't know how accurate that's going to be, just because there was a lot of people, sources I was looking at that were saying that, something like half the people in Europe died and like 30% of the people in the Middle East. Well, okay, but there's a lot of other peoples in other parts of the world. So how are you getting to... I don't know. So, but the point
probably
is a lot.
The population of that general vicinity, but
Yeah. So a lot of people died in
Yeah.
the Black Plague. So what I was curious though is how does that compare to the lemming situation? That's what's really been on my brain all week. We are at 8 billion humans on Earth. If we divide 8 billion by 1,000, we are left with only 8 million survivors. So if the
Oh.
human population was to be reduced by 1,000%, that would be just 8 million people left. And imagine that
Wow.
happening in just 4 years. For perspective,
That's
8 million,
crazy.
yeah, 8 million people is roughly the population of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So imagine everyone in the world being gone 4 years from now, except for the population of New York City. Although that wouldn't be just in New York City; those would be in clusters of small groups of people spread out around the world. If you think about what a radical and fundamental change that would be for society, it's almost unimaginable, and would result in total cultural, political, and economic collapse in just 4
Yeah.
years' time. That would
Yeah.
be stunning. Another way to look at this is that COVID has killed off almost 1/10 of 1% of humans. This would be the opposite. It would be like 99.9% of the population being wiped out instead of surviving. But the other weird side of the story
Whoa.
is that we also have to imagine the population then rebounding back up to 8 billion people again in just 4 years, and then crashing all over again 4 years later.
Humans
it's
don't
truly
reproduce
shocking.
that quickly.
No.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Humans do not reproduce that quickly, so there's no way we could get our numbers back up. So I did kind of do some math on that, Victoria, predictably. Lemmings only live for 1 year, and so their lifespan is about 1/100th of how long a human can live. I know we don't all go to 100, but it's a nice, easy number to work with. If we're generous, we can multiply those 4 years by 100, and then imagine that for humans, the rise and fall of the population might take 400 years, not 4 years.
Okay.
Still,
Okay.
though, it would be
Yeah.
devastating to swing between 8 billion and 8 million people every 400 years.
Yeah.
That would just be bonkers. Now, luckily, for lemmings, they don't have quite the same level of social structure, economics infrastructure, podcasting empires, and say
Of course.
food distribution networks to maintain that we do. But it is just one more example of how nature doesn't have just one way to define success, right? Like this boom and bust pattern, it works for lemmings, and likely has been working just fine for hundreds of thousands of generations. It's just how they do. So we will have to do an actual episode on what this boom and bust cycle for lemmings means for them and the animals that eat them. But
Yeah.
we'll save that for another show. But so just, for now, even if you feel the human population is getting a bit out of control, just be happy that we don't have to deal with the massive problems that would arise if we were to suddenly only have 8 million humans alive just 4 years from now, and then spring back up again, 4 years after that.
If it,
'Cause that
as
would
it
be,
were, fell off a cliff.
Yeah. Wow.
Victoria's coming back strong with the bad jokes this week.
Ugh.
Must have missed out. That was terrible. Just a little
That was-
golf applause.
Somebody had to do it.
Good job.
Well, that's what I have this week. I just wanted to throw some lemming numbers at you and think about population. We'll be back next week with more strange nature. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks for
you.
listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.